Welcome to another episode of Pallet Town. My name's Christian. You're stuck with me for the entirety of this episode. We're checking the Pokemon as per usual. I wanted to talk this episode about pacing in video games. Because with Red Dead Redemption 2 being released very recently, as of this episode's recording, I've found myself mulling over the prospect of video game pacing a lot. Because Red Dead Redemption 2 is an agonizingly slow-paced video game. And it can be, like, infuriating. For me, at least. And I find it fascinating, like, thinking about what is and isn't tolerable when it comes to very slow pacing. And so, before we get into the weeds here, as our sprout, I felt it would be advisable to define what we mean by pacing in a video game. So, I feel that pacing in a video game is just hard to define in the first place. Like, I don't even know how I would go about defining it. It's kind of how quickly things in the game happen, I want to say. So, I don't know, like, how often important events happen might be a good way of describing it. And pacing wasn't really something that really stood out to me in anything for a long time other than JRPGs, because they were just so slow, because there's a lot of grinding involved. And I think that's why a lot of people don't like grinding a lot, me included most of the time, because it just slows the pace to a halt, because important things aren't happening very often. You're just doing the usual, run-of-the-mill, run into random encounters over and over again. So, one game that I recall being talked about often because of its slow pace was Assassin's Creed 3, because it began with you not playing as the main character, and it began with you sitting around on a boat. And I felt that having that slower paced section in the beginning was very beneficial for Assassin's Creed 3, because it occurred at the same time as kind of my honeymoon phase with that game, where I was just, kind of in awe of whatever I was witnessing. Oh boy, we gotta listen to this call from Mom.
So I bought it with your money. Sorry, it's in your PC. You will like it.
Wow, she would buy something without my permission. But yeah, it occurred in the honeymoon phase with the game. Jeez, we didn't get any of these guys. So, like, I was just okay with it, because I was just in awe at how different it was for an Assassin's Creed game.
I am a cat. Sorry to interrupt.
Because, like, you never see ships like that in the ocean in an Assassin's Creed game. In 1, 2, Brotherhood, or Revelations, you did not see a big wooden ship sailing in the ocean. I just thought that was really cool to see. And it totally got me through everything that was happening, even though I couldn't tell you what happened during those opening moments. I know it ended with kind of a twist because of the trophy name, but that's pretty much all I could tell you. Let's go back and heal. And that was a portion that I felt a lot of people had issues with, because it was just slowly paced and you didn't get to things that felt important until later on. And I feel that because of that,
Meow.
I can hold pacing against Red Dead Redemption 2. So that is the main issue I have with it. And I feel it is a significant weakness for Red Dead Redemption 2. I feel like as I've gotten older, pacing has become more apparent to me. I feel like my time is more valuable as someone who has, like, a ton of video games that I want to play at any one time. I become more kind of sentient of how long I'm spending with any one video game or in any one section. And I find the same as with movies as well, how I become less forgiving of kind of pointless drivel that's happening in a video game. And because of that, I'm not a big fan of what Red Dead Redemption 2 is putting down. Because The pacing is ridiculously slow, and it selectively chooses realism. It selectively implements realism in a very frustrating way. Like, certain things take a really long time, whereas other things are just done. Like skinning animations. Like, it used to be like, hey, why can't I skip these? And Rockstar was like, hey, you wanted to skip them? Well, we're gonna make them take even longer, and you're gonna like it because it's realistic, I guess. And at that point, I feel that some people are more forgiving of it because of the realism of it. And I don't play a video game for realism. I mean, it would be very fun to play like a game that's basically real life and just reenact a bunch of what if scenarios. But it's a video game, and the main purpose is to have fun, not having to spend 30 minutes getting to your destination just so that any combat situations you find yourself in feel more impactful, because pretty much nothing has happened for the past half an hour. And it's interesting. It's something that I've mulled over a lot. And I feel pacing only comes to the forefront of my mind when it's an issue. So like when I'm playing Pokemon here, it's pretty slow paced. There's not a lot happening. I'm just walking up to people and doing battles right now. And the pacing becomes apparent to me in a Pokemon game when I'm grinding, because I'm just, not progressing the story in any way. But even while grinding in Pokemon, I feel like the leveling happens mostly at a decent pace, so I feel like important things are still happening, and those important things being me leveling up my Pokemon. So yeah, that's my 2 cents about video game pacing and how Red Dead Redemption 2 suffers significantly from lots of pacing issues. I won't go into too many specifics here. I'm sure we'll talk in depth about Red Dead Redemption 2 in a more timely podcast, but I just found that interesting to think about.
Kristen, I have a confession. I am not your cat. I am a...
Meow.
Pokemon's just kind of a chill, laid-back experience. Unless your Pokemon gets poisoned like that. And unless your cat starts playing with your cords.
Meow.
That's not very good either. We brought our cat to the vet, and her ears were full of gunk. It was nasty. I have no idea how that cat got so much crap in its ears. My dad told me a story one time about his dad, my grandfather. He didn't live long after I was born. I think he passed away after I was like 5 or so. So I didn't know him very well, but I knew him while I was old enough to still remember kind of who he was, what he was like. Anyway, my dad told me a story one time about how my grandpa found himself turning up the TV louder and louder and louder, and he eventually got so bad, his hearing got so bad that the TV was just ridiculously loud, and his wife, my grandma, couldn't take it anymore. And so she told him he needs to go to the doctor, and he did not want to go to the doctor because of the ostrich effect, which is basically we humans do not want to put ourselves in stressful situations, so we don't find out all the information that we want to. So he did not go to the doctor for a very long time. And then he eventually did go to the doctor because his wife made him. He went to the doctor looked in his ears, and then he got his tweezers, and my grandpa was wondering what the heck's going on here. And then he proceeded to remove a giant ball of earwax from his ear. And ever since then, his hearing was perfectly fine. So he's just a little scared about having this giant ball of earwax pulled out from his ear. That does sound very unpleasant. There's like that weird phenomenon that happens when you like put a Q-tip in your ear, and I hear Q-tips are bad for you because you might put them in too far or something, but I find a lot of the time when I put a Q-tip in my ear canal and put it like pretty deep in there and get all that earwax out, my like throat itches, and I don't know why. It makes me feel weird. It's like uncomfortable. Like I feel embarrassed to admit that almost. This is just a very strange phenomenon. I'm afraid that one of these Voltorbs is going to self-destruct. It's cute how they're progressively getting higher leveled. I like that. Is this one like level 11 or something? 14? Nice. I like that. That's cute. Cool. One shot. All right. Well, I don't know what else to talk about in this episode. I mean, I talked about video game pacing and how I feel it relates to Red Dead Redemption 2. And I mean, Red Dead Redemption 2 is getting incredible reviews, which makes me feel like I'm placing more importance on the pacing aspect than other people are, or more people are enthralled by kind of the realism of Red Dead Redemption 2, that the really slow lumbering pace of everything doesn't bother them as much. But boy, does it bother me. Because I'm trying to get my karma up, and I begin every in-game day doing my chores. And so my chores consist of walking over to this one section where I pick up 2 bags of corn. I walk each of them over slowly to a cart. I pick up 2 bags of hay, 2 bales of hay, and walk those over to where they need to go very slowly. Sorry, my cat again. It's getting everywhere. I pick up a pail of water and I walk it over to wash bins so that people can have something to wipe off with and wash up with. And then I walk over to a stump with a bunch of wood and I do the wood cutting that's necessary. And it's ridiculous because that takes like 12, 15 minutes every time I start a new in-game day. And the walking is abysmally slow. It takes forever to do anything. It's just so bothersome. And if you're not going for trophies, then your morality is not as important or significant. So it's not as big of a deal, but still, I think it's a bunch of crap. I have no idea what bugs are weak against. I want to say fire, but let's hope that flying does something against them if I can get out of this confusion spell. Hopefully we'll get out of it sometime soon. No, keep on hurting ourselves here. Jeez. Good. Cool. Okay, flying is super effective against bug. That's good to know. Sweet. I got you, bug catcher. That's weird. He looks like a girl in this sprite. Like, he looks like someone wearing a dress or something. Let's see if we got anything back here. My cat keeps on clawing onto my leg and it hurts. Why do cats have such sharp claws? And that is one of the existential questions that we will continue to ask ourselves. A weird thing about playing Red Dead Redemption 2 is that it kind of makes me want to play something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey even more. Because, I mean, I'm kind of lukewarm on playing something like Odyssey right now, or I was for a while, and then I played Red Dead Redemption 2, and I'm able to appreciate the quality of life improvement something like Assassin's Creed Odyssey gives you. Because Red Dead Redemption 2 is so up its own butt in realism that, like, just doing anything takes so long. It takes so long at the expense of realism. Or at the expense of fun. It emphasizes realism at the expense of fun. And it's ridiculous, and I don't like it. And it makes me like yearn for something like Assassin's Creed where it's just a video game. Like, you unlock a skill that lets you loot stuff faster, or you unlock a skill that lets you loot everything off of someone as soon as you execute them. It doesn't make sense in a, realistic, pseudo-realistic setting, but it's, you know, it is what it is. It's a video game. You want to get back into the action and get to what's fun. And Red Dead Redemption 2 is a lot of riding around on horseback. Well, that was the Red Dead Redemption 2 episode of Pallet Town. I hope you all enjoyed it.
Yeehaw!